Hi, welcome back. This is AGD459 New Media. This is the Machine Illustration Project. And what we're looking at here is we're going to be processing all the chunks. In other words, like we're doing this spot color sort of thing that I was talking about. We're going to be taking all the elements from the JPEGs that we cut out of our particular image and then stipple those and bring those into Illustrator. So before we do this, I'm just doing this to show you the possibility of stippling everything. No way am I saying that it's necessarily a good idea because of the fact that sometimes too much is simply too much. What I want to do is that I want to show the possibility I want to show you what everything looks like if you put it in. And then I want to look at how we can maybe select certain parts and do things that are maybe a little bit more interesting to work with the image in a way that's maybe a little more expressive than just saying, okay, the professor told us to make outlines and do stipples, and we're just going to stack everything up and hope that it looks good. And that isn't what this is about. This is about making good aesthetic choices while doing an experimental method. So this is really the challenge with mine. And actually, the one thing that I'm going to tell you is that after I show you what I'm going to do, with this is that I'm actually going to do some additional things on it, and I'll show you later, but there won't be a tutorial on it because this is when I'm going to be turning it into my artwork, turning it apart from what I teach you. So let's get started. I have online here, I have the Illustrator file from where we left off actually yesterday. And we have the elements of the buildings, the street, and we have a stipple with the glow. So we're not going to be doing a stipple for the sky, and I mean that's fine. We've got this glow. That's going to be nice. And I'm not sure that this back building is going to be well suited for a stipple because it's just so little information there. So what I'm going to be looking at is probably doing these side buildings, the street, and the right-hand side. So let's go over here to Stipple Gen, and you can see that I already have the left-hand side loaded, and it's at 2,000 stipples down here, and that's okay. Really, what I want to do first is that I want to play a bit with the range of size, because that really, when you play with the range of size, it gives you, with the minimum dot size and the range of size, it gives you something that's a lot more similar to a halftone. And if you don't know what a halftone is, it's when you take a grayscale image into print, and you basically use a screen of dots of different size to simulate grayscale using black and white. Actually, there's a filter in Photoshop that allows you to do that, and if you want to explore more, go take a look at that. So what I'm going to do is what I commonly do when after I adjust my dot range and my dot size. What I want to do here is that I want to set my number of dots up, and since I've worked with this program for a long time, I'm probably going to be working relatively fast. So what I really want you to do when you're working with this is that I want you to play with this minimum dot size range. This white cutoff, really, you could use that, and what that's doing is that it's talking to you about how you're going to be setting up like your gray cutoff level. But what we did in Photoshop in processing the images really kind of takes care of having to do anything with that. So you can see here, this is almost turning into a really kind of a cool grayscale. And one thing I want to do, and by the way, this is using Java, so it's a fairly slow program. So you want to be really patient with it. I want to take the dot size range, and it basically, because you can see in some spots it's a little bit big, and I want to take it down more towards the 4 range. This takes a while. Okay. There we go. Take it down to 4. And this should be fine. It's not bad. Another thing is that if I wanted to take the number of stipples up a little bit, I really don't recommend taking anything up more than about 5,000–6,000, as I said, because each time you do that, it means that the machine does that, and it's just, you take too many stipples and it just really slows things down. So I'll take the, I'll do this. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to save the stipple file, and I'm going to, and it's going out here and doing these calculations. And I'm here under this Google Earth Street, and I'm going to left front BLDG, short for building, SVG, and save that. By the way, I want to show you something else, is that basically there's an old computer problem called the traveling salesman problem, basically setting up a series of dots and seeing whether you can have one line go from every dot in a range without overlapping itself. And that is actually kind of what this is doing. And sometime I might also talk about, and that's what this TSP thing is. And I'll just call this TSP. So I'll just show you what that looks like when we go over, and then anyway, that's fine. And what I'll do is that I'm going to go and process each of these, And that's really strange. It seems like both of these are loaded. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to restart stipple generator, and I'll just reload. Sometimes you kind of have to do this. Kind of one of the issues of open source software. It's sometimes doesn't work quite as well as something like Photoshop, but even After Effects has a lot of bugs to it, so that's okay. Since I have a low number of stipples, things calculate pretty quick. I'm going to take down my minimum dot size and then take down my dot range a little bit, and then I'm going to take this up to about 6,000. Let's see what happens. So the reason why I'm doing this is somewhere in the midground, and in the front, these larger dots work pretty well. When I start getting to the back, I find that the smaller dots are going to work a little bit better. So we can see here that this is calculating, and actually I'll put up something. There's something called a Voronoi cell set, and this is also another computer science thing, but it creates some really interesting effects. So if you ever get into computer graphics and code and all that sort of thing, you may want to look into that. This is what I usually do. Is I usually work with a lot of different things that allow me to deal with some of these kind of exotic computer science issues without actually getting into the code that much. I can code, but it's just a matter of saying, do I want to sit down and code something for a month, where I can find a tool that allows me to work with certain algorithms, certain processes, without having to write it. So that's it. The other thing that's kind of cool is the one thing I'm thinking of doing is that stipple generator, the code is available for it. So you can go down in it, and you could technically, if you wanted to get into what the structure of an SVG vector file is and that sort of thing, you could reprogram it to, instead of do dots, you could do arrows, you could have it do little boxes, you could do whatever. And that's pretty cool. So, but guess what? Unless you're really into Java code, I'm just saying that's a possibility. So I've got about 6,000 stipples here. That's pretty cool. I'm going to save the stipple file. And as I said, it's going to take a second. And by the way, that's that traveling salesman thing, which is kind of cool on itself, but I'm not going to use it too much here. Sometimes I'll go and I'll use this with color separations to use a false separation. I've actually got this really cool picture of a cat that I used fluorescent colors with to do this, and I'll show it to you sometime, probably in class. So I'm going to call this left middle building SVG. Okay, and then so let's load the left rear building. See, as you can see, with these settings, it just doesn't work real well, right? So I'm going to take down the number of stipples, and I'm also going to make the dot size range a little bit smaller. I probably even need to take down the number of stipples even lower, down to like under 2,000. So this is the issue when you've got something that's kind of small and needing to do detail. You know, you've got some issues there. So I've taken down my minimum dot size down to 0.75 and my range to 1.85, and you can see I've got some decent detail there. And when I use a pen with this, I'm probably going to have to use a fine point uniball black pen. So that's really one of the few things that I know that really gets out this kind of detail. So we'll see what happens. So save the stipple file. And at this point, we only have two things to do yet. we have to do the right-hand side buildings, and then we have to do the street. Let's say the stipple file. I'll go left, rear, SVG. Okay. All right, let's load the right side buildings. See what we can do with that. And as you can see, I clearly don't have enough stipples for this. So I'm going to take this back up to about 6,000. And I'll probably have to take the dot size range up just a little bit more. Probably take it up to maybe about maybe 3 or 4. And you know what? Let's just see what we have here. I might need to take the stipples down just a little bit. Maybe take it down to about 5,000. Because I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the density of the, of the figure that's being generated, and it just looks way too dense. So the thing is that you don't want to make your mesh so dense that everything's just black, or whatever color you make it, right? It's just it just turns into a mess. So this is why I think I've gotten a couple students talk to me on WhatsApp, say, what happens when I just load this? Well, it isn't really just a matter of just loading it and hitting the button and putting it, and saving the SVG file. It's a matter of really adjusting it and getting the detail you want out of it, getting the look you want out of it, and being able to get the sort of expression that you want out of the software. And so let's load this. Let's save this stipple file, and then I'll just oops. I was going to say load. I want to save this. Okay, I'm going to say right side buildings SVG. Okay, so that's done. All we have to do yet is the street. And then after we do all this, we wind up making layers. And actually the street is probably going to look okay. It's not as good as I want. So in a case like this, where we have something that might not look so great, might not use the stipple. So, it might make sense not to use the stipple on the street and use it on the buildings, or a couple buildings. Okay, I just turned up the dot size. Let's see what happens here. You know what? Oh, look at this. I accidentally put my dot size range down to nothing. That's no good. Let's take it up to about 4. And yep, that's actually not bad. So let's take the stipple file. I'll just say street. SVG, and that's fine. So we're kind of done in the processing area, and we can just go right over here to our Illustrator file. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create layers on top of the other one. Say I'm going to call this street SVG. And I'm going to place and manipulate these files. I'm going to say street SVG. And it's going to take a while because of the fact that we have a lot of elements here. Also understand that the file, the way that this manipulated things, it's pretty different from what the actual file is, So what we want to do is that we want to kind of get things in place. And I know I'm being really, really, really OCD in nudging things around. And then see what I'm doing here is I'm just adjusting everything, get everything in place. And you know what? That's pretty well registered. I'm going to give it a kind of like I'm going to give it a medium. I'm going to give it a dark gray stroke. Now I'll give it a lighter gray stroke. Okay. And then the other thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to get a lot of the extra stipples out of the road. I've got everything else locked except for glow. And I'm going to expand this. Expand on group, expand on group. Just going to do this 2 or 3 times. I honestly don't know how many times it's necessary to do this, but I just know that it's necessary to do this in order to get rid of, get all the stipples away from each other. And so, and then I'm just going to use the lasso tool. Around my extra stipples. And I'll get rid of this bunch. And I'll just use the lasso tool again. And then, guess what? That's all set. So that's kind of interesting. So I don't know. We'll see. Let's take the right building, and I'm going to I'm just going to put a layer in here. I'll just say front right stipple. Okay. Let's bring that in. I've got everything else locked because I can manipulate the stipples on all of these things. So it says right side buildings, SVG. And I'm just going to bring this in at this size. And you can see that, let's see here. Actually, that's pretty registered. So I'm pretty happy with that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ungroup and expand all of these so I can just take the lasso tool and I'll just okay. And then, so what I'll wind up doing is that I'm going to maybe make this, oh, wait a second, this has a fill to it. So I want to get rid of the fill, and I'm going to just play with it a little bit, give it a blue. That's kind of cool. You know, as you can see, though, the one thing that's kind of an issue is that you know, these stipples are gonna take over. You know, if you let them. Now the thing is that I'm just going to show that you could work on the opacity, but that would only work in print. That wouldn't work with the pen because a pen is 100% opacity all the time. So let's just leave the opacity here a little bit just so we can show what the how much influence the stipples have on the illustration. So we have 3 more parts to do. We have the rear building, the middle red, and then this front. So let's get to it. I'm going to lock the front right, and I'm going to do this rear left. So I'm just going to work from the rear left, and then just work back up. So let's go get these files, shall we? Okay. Rear left stipple. And I'll just say left rear building SVG. And I'll just use place. I'll let it deselect. And then I'll just kind of massage it into place. Okay. So as you can see, this isn't well registered at all. That's not too bad. It's getting better. Let's see what happens here with the... And it's probably going to have to go to the left a little bit. Nope. And just a tiny bit to the right. Not bad. I won't lock this. I want to make sure everything else is locked so that I can, again, ungroup and expand. Oh, and you know what? The expansion actually, that's my problem with that. And what I'll do is that, I don't know, what do you want to do with this? I'll just kind of give it this kind of this brown sort of thing. Make it seem like a brownstone, like an old Brooklyn brownstone. So I'm going to take the lasso and I'm just going to go in and just grab all this stuff that has nothing to do with what we're doing. Grab that. Because really, why do I do this? It's because of the fact that, actually that's what I ask myself every day, but that's a whole different matter. But what happens is that I just want to get rid of these extra stipples so that it optimizes the image, and then I'm actually going to take this stroke down just a little bit to half a point so you can see what's happening. And I think it also needs to be just stretched a little bit so that the registration is a little bit better. Okay. And I'm also going to lasso just some of these things up here because they don't have a lot to do with what we're doing. Okay. That's it. So guess what? That's done. That's done. So we have two more to do. I'm going to lock this. I'm going to go to make this layer front red PLDG SVG. Bring that in. As you can kind of see right at this point, using too many stipples is going to just really make things messy. I'm just doing this to kind of show you, what why you probably don't want to use stipples everywhere. Okay. Oh, wait a second. That's the image. That's not the SVG. Let's see here. Where is that thing? Here we go. Left front building SVG. I notice that in your when you're loading things, you don't get a preview for an SVG, which is something I wish Adobe would fix. But don't worry about. As I say, forget about it. That's what they say in New York. They say forget about it. So, and oh, wait a second, I did the front one. That's okay. Don't worry about it. It's I'll just rename that, and as I say, forget about it. And that's not too bad. I'll just maybe just nudge that up just a tiny bit. Nudge that down a little bit. Get it registered. And as I said, you don't have to have everything this nicely registered. And something, I kind of feel like this is feeling like green. Feeling like a dark green. So that's what I'm going to do with it. And then I'm going to wind up, that's kind of cool, actually. I'm going to ungroup it, and I'm actually going to see whether I can get rid of some stipples without expanding it, just seeing whether it ungroups. See whether this is a ungroup or whether it's actually what they call a complex path. Yep, it's just a group. So I will just lasso these stipples out of the road. And okay, that's pretty cool. So I'm going to call this front corner SVG. So let's bring that in. Okay. You know, actually, I'm going to make some choices at this moment. I want to turn off the street.svg. That's kind of cool. I may turn off this rear buildings, but we'll see what happens. Let's place the left middle building SVG. And then bring that in. It's not bad, but it's a little bit big for what we're looking at. So let me go in here and massage it into place. Bring this up here. And I think we're almost there. Yep, almost. Not bad. Okay. Yep, I've got everything else locked. So I'm just going to ungroup this. And actually, I think I'm going to make this a deep red. And then let's just ungroup this and get rid of the extra stipples. And to tell you the truth, this is about it. Let's just get this taken care of, and then let's talk about what we can, you know, really what final choices we have to do before you send it to me, you know? You know, I always hear, Professor, what do we, you know, what exactly do you want? Well, the thing is that I want you to make a good illustration. And this is how do you do that? Make good choices. How do we do that? Well, that's sort of up to you now, isn't it? Oops. What just happened here? Did I, oh, you know what? Huh. Okay, that's a weird thing. Guess what? I forgot to make a new layer. Your professor made a mistake. Actually, a pretty sizable one. Let me get rid of this. Let me lock this. Let me make a new layer and call it left, middle, red, BLEG, SVG. Okay, so, yep, I've got everything else locked. And then let's get this back in there, okay? Guess what? We're almost done. This took longer than the last one, of course, because there's a lot more processing going on. And I know that I probably did this a lot faster than you might, but because I've been doing this for a while. But I hope you can see that this is a pretty cool process. And I have no problem showing it to you because the thing is there's so many different ways you can go with it. That it's so using this technique can be so incredibly individual. So let's see here. Yep, that's about it. And then let's ungroup it. Actually, I'm going to make this into that deep red. And then let's take this and ungroup it. And then lasso out all the stuff we don't need. Because, as I said, everything we don't need is everything every time that pen has to pick up and down on that machine. And I want as few, I want only the ones I need to do, you know what I mean? And that's it. And then okay. So, what sort of choices could we make with this? I kind of like a lot of what's happening here, except for the fact that I think it makes a lot of sense to make the street open. So the thing is that it shows like there's a density in the buildings, and the street can be open. That leaves a contrast. The sky will have a glow in it. That back will have kind of a heavy black. And then the only thing that I wonder about here is the this rear left. I don't know. That's a possibility, one way or the other. I'm not sure. So, what you do is then you just give me this as an Illustrator file, and what I'm going to do then is that I'll turn this into a I'll turn this into an Inkscape file, and eventually it'll go onto my machine, and we'll make stuff for Sika in the fall. But this is the second one. The last one I'm going to show you, and this will be, I think what I'll do is I'll make this due probably end of next week, is the one that takes the four colors. That one's actually not going to be too hard, because what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take the black channel, make a line with that, and then we'll take the four colors and pretty much map them on as we want. But the other thing that I might do is I might also do a spot color for part of it, just to kind of like maybe make a highlight to the illustration. So that's where we're at. So this one is ready to go. I'm going to put a couple other things on, but other than that, you know, as far as you're concerned, this one's done. So anyway, thanks so much for sitting in with me. Hope you got something out of this, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.